As for the appearance, it is even more impeccable, beautiful and generous, and it has a bookish breath from the previous generation of intellectuals. Among the stars of this age group, there is an actress. She is regarded as one of the most beautiful and charming women among the stars of this age group. But Mei Ching is even more beautiful than her. This famous star is in her early 50s and she is still charming, and Mei Ching's actual age is 3 years younger than her, and she seems to be more than 6 or 7 years younger than her. This is an aunt who is nearly 50 years old. This is a eldest sister who is less than 40 years old in her 30s. Charlie was stunned. He really didn't expect that Jacob's first love was such an impeccable super middle-aged beauty. It can be imagined that she must be very beautiful when she was young. God! Charlie is a little envious of Jacob, this wimpy old master. How can he actually fall in love with such a super beauty back then? At the same time, Charlie also sympathized with Jacob more. Because of Elaine, he has lost such a majestic beauty. This is simply picking up a grain of sesame seeds and losing 10 acres of watermelon land. At this moment, Jacob looked at Mei Ching, who was still beautiful in front of him, and felt even more sympathetic to himself than Charlie. Why is there no trace of too much time on Mei Ching's face after more than 20 years? Why is she still so beautiful that he can't breathe after more than 20 years? Why is it that more than 20 years have passed, her shallow smile and faint dimples are still so high, so that she can't move his legs just by looking at her? At this time, Mei Ching walked to Jacob quickly. After standing still, staring at him, she smiled gently. Jacob, I really didn't expect it. We haven't seen you in more than 20 years. Jacob was a little nervous. He was a little helpless and said, yeah, Mei Ching, I didn't expect it to be, for so many years. When Charlie saw that the old master was still holding the flowers when he was talking to Mei Ching, he forgot to give them to her, and hurriedly reminded him behind him, Dad, don't hold the flowers all the time. Give them to her. Jacob came back to his senses, and hurriedly handed the flower to Mei Ching, and said nervously, Mei Ching, this flower is for you. Welcome back to Orus Hill. Mei Ching took the flowers with joy, took a deep look at Jacob, and said, Jacob, thank you. There was no flower in Jacob's hand. He didn't know where to put his hands at once, so he rubbed awkwardly and smiled stiffly. Mei Ching, we haven't seen each other for so many years, why are you polite to me? At this time, a tall and handsome young man with blonde hair came over with his luggage from behind. This blonde young man has white skin, no different from white people in Europe and America, but his eye pupils are black, and his facial features are somewhat Asian in style, and he looks a bit like Mei Ching. He looks like a mixed race. He walked up to Mei Ching and yelled with a smile, Mom, is this your college classmate? Mei Ching hurriedly pulled him and introduced Jacob. Jacob, let me introduce to you. This is my son, Paul. Jacob took the initiative to stretch out his hand and smiled. Oh, Paul, hello. Then Jacob quickly introduced Charlie, saying, Mei Ching, Paul, I will introduce you to this man. This is my son-in-law, Charlie. Paul took the initiative to stretch out his hand to Charlie, smiled and said, Hello, Mr. Charlie. Jacob hurriedly said, By the way, Mei Ching, I have booked a box at Shangri-La Hotel. Let's go to have a meal first, and pick up the dust for you and your son. Mei Ching smiled and said, Thank you so much, Mrs. Jacob and son-in-law, who came to pick us up from afar and invited us to dinner. It should be. Jacob smiled awkwardly, and couldn't wait to say, It just so happened that we were driving there, let's go directly. Okay. Mei Ching nodded, and then said to Paul, Son, tell your driver, we won't take the company car, let's take your Uncle Wilson's car. Paul smiled and said, Okay Mom, I'll call the driver and ask him to send the luggage to the hotel room first. It is good. Paul politely said to Jacob and Charlie, Uncle Wilson, Charlie, wait for me first, I'll make a call, sorry. Jacob hurriedly said, Oh, Paul, look at you child, you are too polite, you don't need to be so polite with your uncle. Paul smiled and said, I should be. After speaking, he took out his mobile phone and walked aside to make a call. Jacob then asked Mei Ching curiously, Mei Qing, you and your son returned to China, and did you arrange a driver in China? Mei Qing nodded and said, after Paul's father passed away, I always want to return to the country to settle, but his father left a company. Paul said that he can't throw away his father's life's hard work, so he began to gradually start business transfer to China 6 months ago. Jacob asked in surprise, did you transfer all the industries to China first? Yes. Mei Qing said, but I don't participate much in these things, it is Paul taking care of it. Jacob nodded lightly, feeling a little inferior in his heart.